CM Punk is coming back to WWE this Saturday night. Now that's me being selfless on this American Thanksgiving, because the reason I'm being selfless is because I am leading off with not necessarily what I think, but what our fans on Twitter/X have voted. 58% of you have said that CM Punk is coming back this Saturday at Survivor Series. So you guys voted. That's what you guys think. I imagine here, me and Brandon will have a little bit change of attitude when it comes to talking about CM Punk and if we think he's going to come back. But we'll start there before we get into this large talk of the Survivor Series, because that is the story everybody wants to talk about. One, if CM Punk doesn't come back, Brandon, is that a bait and switch? Is that a tease? Did WWE do anything to make you think that it's a foregone conclusion that CM Punk's going to be there Saturday?
No, they absolutely did not make it profound that he was going to be there. They literally went out of their way on Monday Night Raw to make sure Cody Rhodes said by the end of the show, "Hey, my legacy brother," and they, he didn't say Randy's name, but obviously as wrestling fans, he made all of the different,
And WWE confirmed it as well. Yes.
Yeah. I mean, it's pretty, it's locked in at this point. So the reason why WWE did that was they didn't want Randy Orton's return when, say, his music hit and people were thinking CM Punk, like they wanted to go over nice and smooth. So that's why they did it. I feel like the reason WWE did that, and I'm kind of hoping that they're doing the old bait and switch on me, is I hope that CM Punk is, he does show up on, this weekend. But I think the way it's being drawn up right now, I think WWE has, has done a pretty good job of making fans not think CM Punk is coming.
I just don't necessarily understand why, we are going on. This upcoming Royal Rumble will mark 10 years since CM Punk has been in the WWE. And if you remember, before him coming to AEW, he was not just never coming back to WWE, but he was never wrestling again. And because he had that resurgence, and because he had that change of heart, and he wrestled for AEW, now all of a sudden you think that he's open to coming back to everything, right? It doesn't make any sense, right? I leave McDonald's. I say I'm never working at McDonald's again. In fact, I'm never working in fast food again. Then all of a sudden I say, you know what? Okay, maybe I was wrong. And I take a job at Burger King. McDonald's over here being like, well, I guess he's coming back to us when he's done with Burger King, right? I don't understand why WWE, it's not even needed. And people saying, well, they're going to Chicago. I don't know if you know, he's been gone for 10 years. They've been to Chicago many, many times, both before he was in AEW, and I get it, it's one of the first appearances in Chicago since his departure from AEW. But this venue was booked, and Chicago is not it's not Edmonton, Alberta, Canada, which is like Chris Benoit's hometown, or Winnipeg, which is Chris Jericho's hometown, or these places they don't normally go. I don't know if you know this, Dynamite this week from Chicago. Tons of AEW shows this week and this year, Chicago. WWE, Raw, SmackDown, Chicago. This is the second Survivor Series coming up in Chicago since 2019. That's only 4 years ago. So, I mean, they're in Chicago all the time. That is like everyone in wrestling's home away from home. So this whole being in Chicago thing, it doesn't sell it for me. And more importantly, I don't understand, just because they're in Chicago and he doesn't work for AEW anymore, that it's a foregone conclusion he's going to come back to WWE. And I don't necessarily know why. I don't know why people necessarily think this. I get the innuendos, but these innuendos, all these people are pointing out, are things that they looked for. And maybe WWE and some people in WWE are reading tweets and are reading the fans and are teasing them because of this stuff to just kind of goat them along a little bit more, do a little Bray Wyatt kind of innuendo kind of things to tease people. But CM Punk in WWE is not something that personally, it's great, fine. If he shows up, whatever, right? But I don't think WWE needs him, not now, but ever again.
Here's the other thing, too. So, I think a lot of people, initially until Randy Orton was announced on Raw this past week, thought, okay, maybe he's the fifth member, of the team. So, and obviously that has that, you could put an extinguisher on that fire because that flame is gone. But a lot of people are saying he could be the mystery opponent for Shinsuke Nakamura. Here's my thing. I'm just gonna put it out there. I think the likely opponent for Shinsuke Nakamura is AJ Styles. I think AJ Styles, there's been talk that his return is also imminent. So for me, I think the phenomenal one is the one who returns this weekend more so than CM Punk.
Yeah, and I agree with the Shinsuke Nakamura thing. I say WWE, that might be something, obviously, that people are reading into. Again, WWE, they do listen to the fans, but at the same time, they're still going about business as usual. So if you read into things and think that it's CM Punk, that's not necessarily where they're trying to take you, right? Just because the Royal Rumble has surprises in them doesn't mean that it's CM Punk every single time, right? That's just the nature of the business in general. And people think because more seats were opened up, this reminds me a lot of like the GameStop stock that they recently made a movie about, where it was like this invisible inflated hype that was just created, and people created this hype about CM Punk, and then they started driving up tickets and selling and buying more tickets, which made it so the WWE opened up more seats to be sold. And people are saying, well, that's because of CM Punk. No, that's because you're buying tickets, I guess, thinking about CM Punk, or maybe just you're buying tickets because it's the Survivor Series. I don't necessarily know also how these correlate. This isn't a Monday Night Raw. This isn't a SmackDown. This isn't like that time that they had the Rampage from the United Center, the first ever Rampage, a 1 hour long show from a 23,000 seat arena. Like, this isn't like that, right? This isn't just a main event episode being taped at the Allstate Arena that they're trying to sell 20,000 seats for. So you must know it's something big like CM Punk.
Well, here's the thing, though.
Like, it's Survivor Series. It's worth
it.
What
it's worth. I know you listen to this more than I do because I don't listen to Bully Ray on the radio or anything like that. But I did see an interesting he fantasy booked CM Punk returning this weekend, and what degree I'm not sure because I didn't listen. I'm not a regular listener of that show. But if Bully Ray, that's interesting that he puts that out there that he thinks CM Punk fantasy booking wise is returning. I just don't see it. I mean, here's my thing. If CM Punk doesn't show up and you get Randy Orton back, you get who I think is going to be coming back as well as AJ Styles, that to me is already a good night. Like, do we really need CM Punk? I don't think so.
Last year in Boston, right, they sold out the TD Garden in Boston for Survivor Series War Games. If they could have, they would have probably taken the set down, but it was already a little bit too late as they were literally adding more and more seats, as Triple H said, post-Survivor Series last year. The demand was high because of War Games, because it's Survivor Series, because they're hyping up Survivor Series, and they're making it a Big Four pay-per-view like it always has been, and they're finally kind of treating it like that, right? So this time around, they just saw the demand ahead of time, which, again, I don't know why they even set it up to not be that demand, because Allstate Arena is one of the smaller arenas. It is one of the Big Four pay-per-views. Money in the Bank was in front of a full crowd. Backlash was in front of a full crowd down in Puerto Rico. So I don't necessarily know why they were giving it like the Monday Night Raw treatment to begin with how hot WWE is in general. But WWE's hot in general. It's a Big Four pay-per-view. It's in a relatively small arena, right? And it's got War Games, which is something that sold out the TD Garden last year and made them add more seats based on that alone. Like you said, this card itself, if it leads up, CM Punk didn't show up last year at Survivor Series. Survivor Series was great last year. Survivor Series was an amazing event. War Games lived up to the hype. Overall, with Sami Zayn and the Bloodline and that whole storyline, the Women's War Games match was great. CM Punk didn't show up there. John Cena, he's from Boston, right? He didn't have to show up. He didn't have to do a special appearance. It was a sold-out crowd. I think they said the biggest gate they've ever gotten in Boston history based on that, right? So I think based on this card here, that Survivor Series could indeed just be a good show without CM Punk. And I will say, I'm curious if WWE breaks the attendance record for Allstate Arena / Rosemont Horizon. They've had a lot of history in that building. It's not the Allstate, it's not the United Center or Madison Square Garden or any place like that. They, as of right now, have sold 17,000 plus tickets, 17,100 tickets. The record at this arena is 18,000 back for Survivor Series 1989. And I believe for WrestleMania 13 in 1997. WrestleMania 22 with 17,155, I believe, because again they had a decent sized set. Yeah. They'll have a smaller set. This will be a more, I guess, full looking arena than WrestleMania 22 was, because they'll have essentially no set in that same arena. So in all honesty, I imagine they'll announce a bigger crowd than WrestleMania 22. But this will be the biggest crowd no matter what. at Allstate Arena since 2006, and it probably will be the biggest crowd since at least 1997 at that arena, and might be the biggest crowd all time. We'll see if they inflate it over the 18,000 mark by the time the show kicks off. But yeah, I'm really excited. The second straight year that War Games is being featured. Finally, like they're doing Survivor Series, where it's keeping that Survivor's element too. I like that we're not completely going to left field and doing one-on-one Hell in a Cell matches. We're doing something where it's like team versus team, but it's not Raw versus SmackDown, meaning nothing, and it's not just good guys versus bad guys. It's team versus team in an element that everyone loves to watch, and it's interesting teams, right? This isn't just like the Nexus versus John Cena and his guys kind of crap.
Dude, the thing that people I don't think are really talking about right now is when Cody announced Randy Orton as the fifth and final member of the team. Did you see Jey Uso's expression? Like if people, just in case you haven't you've forgotten this, Randy Orton was last seen in May of 2022, and who took him off TV? The Bloodline, who I think Jey Uso was a part of at that point. So I'm interested to see the dynamic there. Jey Uso sold it very well. His expression on his face, I'm like, and I had to think about it for a second because I'm watching. I wanted to see the expressions on all the members' faces, and I'm sitting there and I'm like, I look at Jey when you're hearing the Randy Orton, the Legend Killer is coming back and joining the team. You could tell he looked a little uneasy, and I'm like, this is going to get really interesting. Not only on that side of it, to your point, you go to the other side with Judgment Day, Damian Priest and Drew McIntyre. I feel like there's going to be some issues there. They're two combustible elements right now, and I could see those two bulls locking horns and doing something that could potentially cost them a match. This is going to be really interesting to see what happens. And then if you look at other matches, throughout the night, I'm still curious to see what Bayley's role is going to be with Damage Control going forward, because, it's kind of funny. Like, they played it off like, Bayley couldn't understand what the girls were saying, and, she was, they kind of were like, she kind of felt for a second like, oh, are they kicking me out of the club, so to speak? So, they're planting some seeds there. So I'm curious to see what happens. It's, I have to echo your same sentiments. I mean, it's not a big card, but it doesn't need to be. It's a solid card.
It's the same size card as last year. Last year was 5 matches.
Yeah.
I would by the War Games.
It'll be 6 because I know with Shinsuke, so there's going to be 6, I believe, by the end of it. So I mean, that's a style. I always tell people, we've said this before. We always tell our listeners and our viewers, I think 7's kind of like that magic number. So 6, 7 for a pay-per-view. You're going to have this War Games men's match, and I think both War Games matches are going to be good length matches. So I think people are going to get a 3-hour show pretty easily this week.
And I think, like you alluded to, the possibility of a Shinsuke match, right? And I think the reason is because, so when Survivor Series last year was 5 matches, and the Royal Rumble this past year was also 5 matches, because these are an Elimination Chamber this past year was 5 matches because of the fact that these Elimination Chambers, these War Games, they're long matches, they bookend. They're like the Royal Rumble. They each take just about under 40, 45 minutes each. So the better parts of an hour, both, right? And then the other matches kind of fill up 1 hour by itself. And I think because Carlito and Santos Escobar isn't necessarily a match anyone thinks is going to go 20 minutes. Because of that, maybe Shinsuke can add a 6 match in there, because this isn't 5 solid matches. This isn't maybe like the Royal Rumble where you have 2 Royal Rumbles and then you have 3 matches that could go 20 minutes each. I think the Carlito Santos Escobar match, an interesting storyline. Obviously, Santos Escobar turning heel, turning on Rey Mysterio after he was accused of leaving the brass knuckles on the ring that Logan Paul used to his advantage to win the U.S. belt. But yeah, because I don't think that match has got a lot of length to it, I think that maybe you could sneak in another match that also doesn't have a lot of length. I would say if it's Shinsuke versus anybody, even if it's Shinsuke versus AJ, I think it'll still probably be a quick match that'll maybe lead to future longer matches down the road. It'll just be quote unquote a segment. Because I think Gunther and The Miz, right? That's going to be a solid match. And can The Miz, imagine if The Miz wins the U.S. or the Intercontinental title. I mean, you talk about Dominic getting booed. Could you imagine if Miz is the one that ends this long streak? What kind of reaction would he have coming out on Monday Night Raw with the IC belt? I mean,
that would to me, that would be, quite interesting. It's and like what would his reign be? It'd be his ninth reign, right? I think it is. I think it'd be his ninth, IC title reign, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. Which that's quite an accomplishment in itself for the Miz. So I just don't. I don't know. I mean, we'll break down the. I mean, we'll break that down a little bit more, but I don't know if Miz is going to pull it off. I feel like Gunther's going to have the belt for a little bit longer. Like, yeah, he's he's got the longest reign. He's 500 plus days, this, that, and the other thing. Is Miz the guy who does it, or is it somebody else? That's the real question.
I mean, I'd imagine it's somebody else. I imagine it's. I mean, we all like the Miz, right? But like, and WWE likes the Miz. I think that's the thing. People always dream match this stuff, but WWE, they don't always give you the dream match perspective, right? If WWE gave you the New Japan approach, right, the Miz wouldn't even be there, right? The Miz would not be in these matches. We'd always have Gunther versus AJ and those kinds of matches, and Kenny Omega versus Roman for the belts, and those kinds of things would be what WWE gives you if like these fans could dream scenario, a Gunther versus Brock, or Gunther versus Cody or something like that, right? But WWE doesn't always do that, right? They give us the U.S. champion as somebody who maybe isn't. Okay.
I'm going to give you one out of left field that we might come back to this, a little while down the line, and people will be like, wow, you saw this coming. It's really, for me, this is really out of left field, but as of recently, I feel like Imperium is having some issues. And I feel like Kaiser, I feel like Ludwig Kaiser, I think there's some tension there. Wouldn't it be interesting if like somehow it circles back to him at some point down the line here, that he gets a match with Gunther, and then he takes the title off of him? Like, that would be interesting. Like, I feel like that would be cool. I'm a big fan of Kaiser. I think he's got the look. He's got, I think he's great on the microphone. Like he like, it's little things like his body language, his facial expressions. Like, he does all the things you're looking for in a star. And that could be a star-making moment for a guy like Kaiser, in the near future. So don't be surprised if that's the guy who does it. I'm like I said, I'm coming out of left field.
Holding off, or maybe even Dragunov, coming up and doing that kind of,
Absolutely. My thing is, the point is, I just don't, as much as I respect Miz and what he's done for the business, he's going to be one of those dudes that, like, when he's gone, you're like, oh, man, I really miss the Miz. Like, people don't appreciate what Miz brings to the table. So, like, if he wins it, like, I'm going to be happy for him, obviously. But I feel like they're saving this title change for the IC, the IC championship for, maybe what they feel like is somebody that, it's a star-making moment. Miz is already a star. Like, he has all these different things. So I feel like they're saving it for somebody who's just needs that little extra kick.
I think they also probably want to put it on that huge stage, like with Roman. They want to kind of do that. Maybe that could maybe main event one of the nights of WrestleMania, right? If we're at a point where he's been champion for so long, I think that would earn the spot to be one of the main events of WrestleMania, like WrestleMania Saturday night. I will say a little inside baseball when it comes to the Gunther Miz match, and what people may not realize, and you say, wrestling's scripted, and even wrestlers nowadays will even kind of shoo what they used to do with kayfabe and talk about how things were even more scripted than you might have think, and even some sort of shoots were not really shoots, they were scripted. But I will tell you a shoot. I will tell you something that really did happen in the world of WWE that was not supposed to happen, and I was there to witness it. And I noticed there was something off at the time, and things have kind of confirmed that it was indeed true. So in the match to determine the number one contender for Gunther's belt about 2 weeks ago on Monday Night Raw, Ricochet essentially got his he landed on his head. There was like a move where he did like a Hurricane Rana, then his head got squished, and he seemed to be a little bit out of it. And it was something that happened throughout the rest of the match where he didn't appear to be 100%. The finish for the match was supposed to be The Miz and Ivar pinning at the exact same time, and then that turning into the following week on Raw to have a one-on-one match between Ivar and The Miz to determine the number one contender. I even know this, too, to be specific, because off camera, where I was sitting on the not hard cam side, but the other side of TV, Adam Pearce came out, and I was sitting in pretty good seats and stood pretty much right beside me. And I'm thinking, okay, he's going out into the ring, right? Something's going to go out here. He's going to go out into the ring. But then he did not. Then he waited there while Miz celebrated. and went back to pretty much show that the idea was he was going to come out through the crowd, he was going to come in the ring, and he was going to announce it a draw, and he was going to say they're going to face off next week. But because Ricochet kicked out of Ivar's finisher when he wasn't supposed to, essentially giving the win to The Miz and The Miz alone, they just went with The Miz being the winner. They scratched the Ivar versus Miz tie-breaking match for the following week on Raw, and Adam Pearce pretended like nothing ever happened, and he went backstage. But you can clearly tell that something was wrong because, like I said, Adam Pearce came out and even kind of like talked to a referee and a worker beside him. Like, are we still going to pretend that they both got pinned at the same time?
Here's the other thing, too, though. Like, that part of that match, like, so Ivar and Miz still face each other the following week, I believe, but obviously there was no stipulations because I remember a backstage segment where Ivar pretty much said, you're not going to make it to Gunther, kind of a thing. So I think WWE pivoted well because I do think Miz is still going to be the guy who is going to inevitably win. So I don't think that whole Ricochet mishap where he should have done what he did on accident. Things happen in the business. I still think we're getting the match we were designed to get in the first place. It was just a different way that WWE had planned.
But you can definitely tell because, like I said, Adam Pearce didn't. Where I was sitting was not on television, so he was planning to go into the ring and make some sort of announcement, and then they pivoted the last second, and he literally looked over at the worker, and they said they're just going to give it to The Miz, and he said got it, and he went backstage. So there was something planned that was supposed to happen that did not happen. Yeah. So a little inside to confirm because there was a lot of stories out there that he was supposed to kick out, and I think my first-person account of actually seeing Adam Pearce out in the crowd, standing beside me, like ready to go in the ring, waiting for direction, and then literally just leaving, kind of confirmed that. So Zoe Stark and Rhea Ripley, we talk about, taking championships off of people. Zoe Stark's been getting a push as of late. Do we see her getting the push though to beat Rhea Ripley? Because I don't think that at all.
No, I don't think so either. It's to me, I think so far we've already talked 2 championship matches in particular. I don't see it. In general, those are the only 2 title matches. So I guess we're not going to see any title changes at Survivor Series this weekend. But here's the thing. It'll still be a good night because, as we mentioned, Randy Orton's going to be there. I'm projecting AJ Styles will be there. So it's still going to be a night of surprises in one way, shape, or form. So, we don't necessarily need the title changes at this point. I don't think they've been built up enough to have these title changes. So I feel like we're going to wait on these title changes eventually. And that's nothing against Zoe Stark, for example, here, because Zoe Stark's put on some great matches. Her backstage segments have been good. She's been doing a really good job. She's put a lot of work in, so I give her a lot of credit. She is a future champion. I just don't think that championship's going to go around her waist this weekend.
Before we get to who wins and a question I want to talk about specifically related to heel turns and the potential of in the War Games matches, that's how we'll finish things out this week. But you've got some Survivor Series facts for us to encompass this 37-year event. Can you believe it? They don't put the Roman numerals on it or the numbers on it, but hey, this event is 30. This is Survivor Series 37, which is, in all accounts, if WrestleMania wasn't around, this would be WrestleMania when it comes to longevity.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, I'm looking through my facts here, and of course, I have to bring up Randy Orton. This has been a Randy Orton show pretty much, since we started this, this episode, and it's a twofer. So I'm going to give you 2 in 1. So it's so Randy Orton will have his 16th match at this pay-per-view or premium live event, which will lead all active, and I have to say it this way, WWE wrestlers, because there are some wrestlers in other promotions like AEW that are still wrestling to this day. So he's the leading active WWE wrestler in that category. So he'll have his 16th match, and at this point he is 9-6 is his career record at a Survivor Series premium live event. Now, part 2 of that is Randy Orton with that 16th match will move into 3rd all time in Survivor Series matches. Can you name the others that are in front of him?
It would be so easy to say something like The Undertaker and stuff like that, but I'm not going to go that way. I'm going to go towards a man who shows up on all these lists. I'm going to say Chris Jericho. Is he in the top 3 there?
Nope, he is not. I'll give you one more guess.
Is he in AEW right now? Is his name Edge?
He is not in AEW. I'll just say this. These 3 I don't ever expect in AEW. I'll just say that.
All right. So
I guess I'm giving you one more clue.
I'm going to say Kane.
Ding, ding, ding. There's one.
I'm gonna say. I mean, it's a difficult. John Cena.
Nope.
Uh, ooh, I don't
So you
want to
got
say
Kane.
Stone Cold. Don't
Nope.
think
Not
that's
Stone
right.
Cold.
Yeah.
All right, I'm gonna give you the
Triple
other one.
H.
Nope.
All right,
Triple H is
I'm
high
out
on
of
the
guesses.
list, but he's at Randy Orton's already. I believe he's either tied with him right now, or he's breaking the tie. He's surpassing Triple H one way, shape, or form this weekend. I can't remember if he's going to pass him with this appearance or he already has. I'm just going to give you the other two. So you mentioned Kane. So Kane is tied with the Heartbreak Kid Shawn Michaels with 17 appearances and matches. Number one is Undertaker with 18.
So it is. I did say Undertaker. I
Did
said
you?
I'm not. I said I'm not going to say Undertaker because that seems easy.
Oh yeah, see that's yeah. I guess I
Do we
missed
count
that part of
Undertaker's
it.
like farewell appearance? That's not a match, right? That where he showed up in 2020 for the farewell Survivor Series.
I don't think
That's
so.
another forgotten COVID thing. I mean, we forget all the COVID time in general. But that's another thing where they really like had to shoehorn in his retirement in 2020. They could have, because he didn't go into the Hall of Fame until 2022. They
Yeah,
really could have waited till Survivor Series 21 to kind of do that ceremony because it wasn't based on like a certain number of years. It wasn't like the 25th anniversary or anything like that. They really just wanted to get that retirement in as soon as he retired at WrestleMania 36. They really wanted to just get that retirement in at the Survivor Series. I don't know why they rushed it because, like I said, he didn't go into the Survivor. He didn't go in the Hall of Fame the following year. He went in 2 years away, so they could have pushed it to be in front of fans the following year. But
I do want to give you one more fact,
all
or one more. I'm actually going to ask you this question, so it is going to be a fact after you answer this. So, and we can debate this part of it. So, of the big 4/5 premium live events that WWE has every year now,
right.
um, what is Survivor Series missing from the others? There's the way they do the event. There's something that the other ones have already done at least once that Survivor Series has never done.
I don't remember there ever being a Hell in a Cell match at the Royal Rumble, so I'm not going to say that. Um, is it some sort of match stipulation that's never happened?
Nope, not a match stipulation.
Phew. Well, all the other ones have been at stadiums at some point. Survivor
Ding,
Series
ding,
is
ding, ding,
not.
ding, ding. We have a winner. That is that. I knew you were going to get there. So of the big 4 or 5 premium live events that WWE airs,
I mean, Money in the Bank hasn't been at a stadium. They did announce it to be at Allegiant Stadium like 2 years ago, but then backtracked off of it. But I know all the others, Rumble, SummerSlam, and WrestleMania, obviously have all been in stadiums.
and that's the debate part of it. So like I'm on the fence with the big 4 or 5. Like we consider the big 4 traditional, Royal Rumble, Mania, SummerSlam, and Survivor Series. So of those big 4, it technically is that. But you are correct with the Money in the Bank. I was waiting for you to say that because I know we were talking about the stadium. I was leading you there. I knew you were going to get there because you've been to a lot of these shows over the years. So I figured you would figure that out. So yeah, it's interesting that Survivor Series has never done a stadium. Do you think that Survivor Series will ever get a show in a stadium?
I think that they could have done something similar where they, and I don't want to bring up your friend Dave Meltzer there for a second, but kind of a conversation I saw that he was having related to this on the social media realms is that you don't necessarily like with Money in the Bank when they announced it for Allegiant Stadium a couple years ago. The idea wasn't to get 50,000 people. The idea was to just get more people than an arena. And I think Survivor Series, if booked correctly, obviously it's winter time, so it has to have to be somewhere indoors. But I think if you're trying to just get like 30,000, in that range, maybe a small indoor baseball stadium, like the field in Houston or Tropicana Field or the one in Arizona. I think if you book it right, it could do a stadium show. I mean, even like, hey, I think Arthur Ashe Stadium might have that exclusive deal with AEW, but I mean, that's kind of a stadium. That could get you like 23,000. I will say, because of Money in the Bank last year in London, I think drawing just under 19,000 because of that arena and the fact that Survivor Series has never. Well, I think a Survivor Series has already been at Madison Square Garden, and I think they've probably drawn 20,000 or close to it. I don't know what the largest attendance even is for Survivor Series. It might be around like the 18,000 mark because they for the most part don't use full arenas, right? They have the typical stage which blocks off part of the arena. So even at like Madison Square Garden when they had Survivor Series in 2011, but I think Survivor Series in '96, the one that Rock made his debut at, they used a whole arena there, so that might have pushed it close to the 20,000 mark. So it's any pay-per-view can get, you just get a stadium to a degree if you just book it right. I think Survivor Series has the advantage of being the historic pay-per-view. If you essentially say it's going to be War Games, it's going to have a little fan fest with it. I mean, they're going to have the store with it, as they've already announced nearby. They're going to have a little store and like meet and greets with wrestlers, try to make a weekend out of it. So it's definitely possible to be a stadium. You got to kind of book it right from the get-go, and you got to show people it's going to be a big deal. I will say one thing before we move on to the main events of these matches I wanted to talk about. Chicago and the Allstate Arena, it's a place that's held a lot of WWE. It held the first ever WWE pay-per-view event ever, which is not WrestleMania or Survivor Series. It's actually the Wrestling Classic in 1986. Because if you remember, WrestleMania 1 and 2 were closed circuit events, and I think maybe available on pay-per-view in very limited markets, but the Wrestling Classic, which took place later in 1986, which was like a tournament style and where the winner got a Rolls Royce, took place at the Rosemont Horizon as the first ever WWE pay-per-view event that was a not closed circuit, but just pay-per-view event. And they've hosted Manias. Yes, Brandon.
I was just looking at the attendance number, so I was able to find it. Didn't mean to cut you off there, but I just happened to find it. And the record for the attendance for a single Survivor Series is 21,179. And this was actually, I'll let you guess the city on this one because they've been to a lot of the same cities.
You know what? I'm going to actually, we were just talking Madison Square Garden. I do know one place that's got a big stadium and can sell a lot of tickets. And it was one of the ones that broke a lot of records in the past. It necessarily hasn't anymore. But I'm going to say St. Louis.
Ding. You win again. Yeah, it was so the fans packed into the Kiel Center.
Which is now the Enterprise
Missouri.
Center.
Yeah,
yes.
1998. And here's the thing. We were talking about how we wanted to see, our ideal number of matches is, 7 or less. This card had
because of the
14.
tournament. Yes, it was a lot of those quick 1 minute, 2 minute get in it, and that's a 2 hour and 40-minute pay-per-view.
Yeah.
But I was saying about Chicago and all the events that they've held at the Allstate Arena and / Rosemont Arena specifically. Did you know that they have hosted now? This will be the third Survivor Series, which I feel like they've hosted more, but this is only the third Survivor Series. Yeah. They've hosted 3 WrestleManias, part of 2, 13, and 22. They've hosted Money in the Bank. They've hosted Battleground. They've hosted Backlash. They've hosted Hell in a Cell. They have never hosted either Royal Rumble or SummerSlam at that arena. Really? In fact, Chicago has only hosted one of those 2, and that was SummerSlam 94 at the United Center, which is WWE's one and only televised show ever at the United Center, SummerSlam 94, but they've never hosted a Royal Rumble at either United Center or Allstate Arena, and they've never hosted a SummerSlam at the Allstate Arena. So a little interesting fact that with all the stuff that they've hosted, they are missing out on 2 of the big pay-per-views.
And here's one last fun fact for you. Richfield, Ohio has hosted 2 Survivor Series.
The first 2.
Yeah, well, so it was Survivor Series 1992, and then it was.
Well, no, it hosted 3 then, because it hosted the first 2 and then 92. If I'm not
right.
mistaken.
Yeah, you're right. It is 3. Yeah. Yep. So 90. Yeah. So 80. Yeah. 97. No, 87, 88, and then it was 92. Isn't that crazy? Because that's like a suburb of Akron, isn't it?
No. That's the old. So. You forget about it now, but so the Cleveland Cavaliers Arena in Cleveland was outside of Cleveland in Richfield, Ohio. So that is the home of the Cleveland Cavaliers, and I think when they had a hockey team, the home of theirs as well, like back in the day. But that was the home of the Cleveland Cavaliers until they built what is currently now Rocket Mortgage Fieldhouse / Gund Arena when it opened. But before that was built in 1995. That was the home of the Cleveland Cavaliers.
Yeah, and actually, I'm looking at it here. So this, obviously, Richfield Coliseum is no more as it was demolished in 1999. So it's been demolished almost 25 years.
Yeah. It's pretty far out too. It's like 40 miles outside of Cleveland, which is, it reminds me a lot of like the Palace of Auburn Hills, how the Pistons played like good 40 minutes away from the city of Detroit. Which is weird because again, for like sports like that, you're just used to them having downtown arenas, being close to the city center. But to be like with football, it's usual, because it's a once a week thing. But with basketball, you're not used to people having to travel 40 minutes, especially like in a city like Cleveland. Like if you don't have a car, you don't have an opportunity to go to a Cleveland Cavaliers game. There's no subway that's going to take you out to the suburbs, to the Richfield Coliseum.
Yeah, you're kind of SOL pretty much.
So with these two main event matches, I want to ask you one simple question, right? Not really giving you the winners or losers, but this would give you the winners or losers, and this is how we'll end this week's show. Randy Orton, does he turn on the team, causing them to lose to Judgment Day? Yes or no?
No. I think we are going to get a Randy Orton run as a face. I think we're going to get that. That's my gut feeling, a face. More likely, I think Drew McIntyre and Damian Priest do something that causes the Judgment Day to lose the match.
Bayley, does she either get thrown out or turn on her team, costing her the match and damage control the match?
I think Bayley, yes. I think Bayley is going to get kicked out of damage control.
And we'll end the show the same way that we started this segment here. Your opinion, CM Punk. Yeah, is your redo on the Edge in AEW question, because you were wrong in that one, which we thought that will never happen. And here we are, right, with Edge in AEW. Yep. CM Punk, Saturday. Is he there or is he not?
Well, I might as well start swinging for the fences here. So if I go 0-2, it's fine. CM Punk is not going to be at Survivor Series this weekend. If I'm wrong, y'all can at me. You can, send me stuff on Twitter at Icebreaker21. You can do all that. That is fine. I'm just going to say it now. You heard it here. AJ Styles will be the mystery opponent for Shinsuke Nakamura, and obviously Randy Orton's back. So it's AJ Styles that returns, not CM Punk.
I say the same. I don't think CM Punk comes back because, more importantly, it's not so much about CM Punk coming back. It's about WWE bringing back CM Punk. And personally, if he does come back, he comes back. But I just don't see why and what would be the reason other than, hey, it's cool he hasn't been here in a while. Like, he's been gone for, like I said, just shy of 10 years. And the WWE in the last 10 years have gone up and down and over and out and without AEW and with AEW and breaking records to a point that it's not really needed, right? It's not something, if New England Patriots went on and won 4 more Super Bowls, would you be wanting Tom Brady to come back? You're like, what would be the point, right?
Well, that's the thing. You've said this before in previous episodes where it's like, a combination of factors. Like, okay, CM Punk, he did that big return with AEW, and then how AEW and CM Punk parted ways. There's kind of a bad taste in the mouth for a lot of people. So, like, at this point, like, what does WWE really have to gain? So, like, to me, that's why I'm hesitant to say that he'll come back to WWE, especially at Survivor Series this weekend.